Hi there, I'm Jesus Sunny, and you're about to watch 31 of my reviews for this Halloween Horror Picture Show. Every October, I ask and also just decide to watch a few Halloween/horror films throughout the entire month, once a day. I don't review films that I've already previously reviewed in other Halloween Horror Picture Shows. This is my third year doing this and my first time ever recording my reviews. So I added a little bit of a compilation of every single review this month. I hope you enjoy. Happy October 1st, and we will be now watching the first Halloween film of the month, which is going to be Scary Godmother, Halloween Spooktacular. Alright, so I just finished watching Scary Godmother, Halloween Spooktacular, and it was very nostalgic. I remember watching this a lot on Cartoon Network, so I did have a lot of fond memories. The animation has not aged well at all. Characters still had charm in some elements, and also the Halloween music really just fit the vibe though. But there were some cool moments. I like this one clip.
Bert, nobody puts CBs in SUVs these days.
You just left your baby cousin to the mercy of killer monsters on Halloween night, and you're concerned with the additions and upgrades in my cardboard SUV?
Good point.
But apart from that, overall, I would say it's definitely a special, so it can go anywhere from a 6 to 6.5, but it was enjoyable overall. I guess that's my review for Scary Godmother, Halloween Spooktacular. Catch you all tomorrow to see the sequel, and have a sunny day. Bye. Happy October 2nd. It's time to watch another spooky Halloween film for this October, and tonight we will be watching Scary Godmother, The Revenge of Jimmy. Okay, so I just finished watching Revenge of Jimmy, and I will say that I'm probably going to lower the rating of the last one to now like a 5.5 to 6.5 out of 10. And this one's going to be a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe a 7 depending on it, because again, nostalgia, and even then it's a special. So I'm not putting it to that higher tier. But if we have to, maybe around a 6 to 6.5, I think that's where we would put it. It was good. It was better. It was a sequel that did not need to happen, but yet it is just so good. I like seeing Jimmy's decline as he turns into a Grinch. Still a very, very good time. Very nostalgic. So overall, that's my rating for Scary Godmother, Revenge of Jimmy. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's review. Have a sad day, y'all. I'll catch you all later. Bye. Happy October 3rd. We're going to resume our Halloween horror movie watch right now with John Carpenter's The Thing. Let's get started. Here's my review. I had no idea that when I decided to watch The Thing, I was actually going to watch the newest Among Us movie. Okay, but all jokes aside, the film is really good. It is phenomenal. I would say it's a 9 out of 10. It is damn near flawless. It just feels like 9 out of 10 is the perfect rating for it right there. Maybe a few elements could be worked around a little bit, but overall the film is just engaging. It has a couple twists and turns, and I was engaged the entire time. My girlfriend who was watching it was engaged the entire time, and it's just a phenomenal film. The cast is incredible, and the visuals are stunning. There's gore, but there's also some action and some twists, and it is just visually also very appealing. I would say that overall, The Thing gets a solid 9 out of 10. I highly recommend watching it, and stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's film of spooky season. Have a sad day, y'all. Catch you all later. Peace. Happy October 4th, and for today's horror Halloween picture flick, we will be watching the 1979 film Alien. Let's get started, and here's my review. Aliens is a really good movie. It takes a little while to get into, at least for me in the beginning half, but once it gets really going, it really just kind of gets you going right there overall. I would say that around the final half of the film is when I was really just glued to it, but for the most part, it was a very well-made film. And just as The Thing, Alien also continues to be a very revolutionary type film. It's a classic, and many of the tropes that were presented in this film have been followed down throughout many films and shows down the line. I thought the cast was really great, and I thought that the threat of the alien going through it was very much more present. The situation definitely does seem dire, and I think that the stakes really were just put right there, which was fantastic. And overall, I would say that the atmosphere that the film brought was perfect for what it was trying to convey, and overall I'm leaving Alien with an 8.5 to maybe a 9 out of 10. So with that being said, make sure to stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween horror picture flick, and have a sunny day. Spooky time. Bye. Happy October 5th. We will now resume our Halloween horror picture flick with the 1986 sequel, Aliens. I just want to say that I experienced a lot of technical difficulties trying to start the film, but for the most part, we got through it, and now we have finished watching Aliens, and here are my thoughts. Overall, I would say that the film was still very intriguing, and it definitely kept me watching throughout the entire time. Unlike the first one, definitely this one grips you a lot more, and it does feel like a natural progression from the first one. It's a lot more world building, which I did enjoy. That being said, I would say that it does feel like certain elements from the first one were a little bit more stripped away, whereas the first one was more horror based. This one does feel a little bit more action based in certain areas. New characters don't always hold the most memorable aspects of it, and it does feel a bit cheesy at times. Another issue that I have is that the sequel
doesn't feel like it progresses much. It feels kind of like everything that we knew kind of just expanded upon, but no real genuine progress of what had happened, therefore making it not feel as strong, I guess. For the most part, it's still really solid, and I still highly recommend watching it. I would say that overall, Aliens can go anywhere from a 7.5 to maybe an 8.5 out of 10, maybe a solid 8 out of 10. So make sure to stick by to want to see tomorrow's Halloween horror picture flick. Have a sad day and a spooky night. Bye. Happy October 6th, and welcome back to our Halloween horror picture show. Tonight we will be watching the sequel to Unfriended, Dark Web. Here are my thoughts. If the original I gave a 2 out of 10 and a 1 star, the sequel is probably like a 1 out of 10. I'm still leaving it at 2 out of 10. Unfriended Dark Web is a 2 out of 10. It is ridiculous. It's not that, look, I'll give the premise still some credit, although it's been done way better now. But at that time, I believe it was still relatively unique. So overall, I'm giving it that. I will say this though, apparently there are multiple endings to this film that were given in different theaters. So that is a fun little scavenger hunt to try to find all the different endings, because that did seem pretty cool. I'll give it that. But it's not as entertaining. It's pretty lame. It's okay, I guess, in some aspects, but overall, I would say that there's no real substance to the film, and overall, it does feel a little bit like a waste. It's a fun sequel. I sometimes like to watch things that aren't as good, so I had a pretty fun time, or at least a pretty entertaining time, but the film was like a 2 out of 10. So Unfriended Dark Web is a 2 out of 10. And with that being said, make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween horror picture flick. Have a safe day and a spooky night. Catch you all later. Bye. Happy October 7th, and welcome back to our Halloween horror picture flick marathon. Tonight we'll be watching Terrifier. Here are my thoughts. Given that this is a slasher film, it's a little bit more difficult to give this specific ratings. The film looks good, dirty, but it also has some color to it, I guess that you can say. Art the Clown is definitely an antagonist. He kind of reminds me of Joker, and kind of like what Joker could be if he was really violent, but there's no charisma really to it. I mean, a little bit of this clown energy, but overall, not as strong, I would say. Although, definitely a memorable Halloween type of villain that you can remember every October. Being said, the acting is definitely not as good, and I would say that in terms of story, there's no real story. Given that it's a slasher, I'm giving it that credit, because I believe this is more of a appreciation towards that craft. And overall, I would say that for that, it does succeed. So I can give it points for that. If you like slashers or anything, you might have a good time watching this film. I don't want to take anything from that from you. So if you are into that type of film, I would definitely recommend watching it. But if you're not into that type of stuff, I would not recommend watching it. You're not gonna have a good time. It's a slasher film, it's violent, it looks good, but the acting is just not as strong, and there's not really a good, strong story. I'm gonna have to say that Terrifier is gonna be somewhere around a 4 to 5 out of 10. So with that being said, stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween horror picture flick. Have a safe day and a spooky night. Bye. Happy October 8th. And welcome back to our Halloween horror picture flick. Tonight we will be watching Ghostbusters Afterlife. Here are my thoughts. Honestly, the film is overhated. Like, I don't know if you know, but this film does have a bit of a divisive type of fan base, with some calling it nostalgia bait and some actually really enjoying this film. I fall under the area where I find it, for the most part, it's charming. It has its charm and it has very good elements, although I can notice why some may call it more of a nostalgia bait. For the most part, this film does feel like a natural progression of the first two, and it does feel very conclusive, which I enjoy. It feels like a nice end to all of these characters and their chapters. And I think the thing that bugs me is probably the very, very end. Other than that, I would say the visuals look stunning, the music is still very whimsical and appropriate, and the story also feels like a natural conclusion from the first two films. I would say that the characters, for the most part, are pretty alright, a little bit 2D in aspects, but I would say that the film is still very solid and highly recommended. And with that, I'm leaving Ghostbusters Afterlife with an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween horror picture flick, and have a safe day and a spooky night. Bye. Happy October 9th. Welcome back to our Halloween horror picture show. Tonight we'll be watching Trick or Treat. Come find out what I think, if you dare. It's the ultimate Halloween film. When you think of Halloween, you think of Trick or Treat. Honestly, this film probably deems the name Halloween more than Halloween itself, although Trick or Treat is a more appropriate name given the whole subject of the film. But honestly, I had a fantastic time. This film was pure magic, Halloween magic, and it had everything that you would want in a Halloween film. It has some frights and it can be a bit violent at times, but what I really do enjoy about Trick or Treat is that it never takes itself too seriously, containing the entire important essence of Halloween. This is what Halloween is. It's a moment of fear, magic, a lot of twisted horror. Everything that you get in a Halloween film, you have it all up here with plenty of tricks and treats. I would say that I absolutely enjoyed every single minute of it. Every story was stitched perfectly together, making it make sense with some twists, some turns, and although some elements were predictable, for the most part, the entire story was fantastic. Everything has a different story that's all interwoven into this big mega story that yet still makes sense. I love that scarecrow design as well. But overall, I'm giving Trick or Treat a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. Phenomenal film. Highly recommend watching it. Watch it this Halloween. Stay by to see tomorrow's Halloween horror picture show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 10th. Tonight we'll be watching Silence of the Lambs. Here are my thoughts. Call it a nice hot streak of the horror films that we've been watching recently, but Silence of the Lambs is a literally phenomenally well-made film that is fantastic to watch from beginning to end. Jodie Hopkins does a fantastic job as Starling, and it's Anthony Hopkins who really steals the show for me in terms of how he portrays Cannibal. Being someone that's very brilliant and crazy. Tell that he's not just
manipulating Starling at times, but he's also kind of manipulating you. Particularly found it very interesting and really enjoyed the creative decision made of having characters staring directly at the camera, almost as if they're staring directly at the audience as well. Thought that a few aspects maybe could have been dealt with a little bit more with detail, especially around the beginning portion of the film, but as the film progresses, it gets substantially just better and better. And it was already really good in the beginning. It just gets great towards the end. You can tell the amount of influence that this film has had, especially around the crime genre type of areas, especially with some horror elements and analytic elements, especially when it came to interrogations brought throughout the scene. Silence of the Lambs is a phenomenally well-made film that I highly recommend watching, and I'm leaving a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. Oh, stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show movie watch, and have a sunny day as well as a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 11th. Tonight we'll be watching Jordan Peele's latest horror flick, Nope. Here are my thoughts. Me, in standard Peele fashion, this film has a lot to love. The performance is great all around, the directing was phenomenal, and the music choice and the way that they used music was fantastic. One of the spookiest films that I've seen for many reasons, but at the same time, it still has that humanity and that humor that keeps you still going and sticking with it. Today I went with more of a Western theme because the film is very much more of a Western type themed film. Western meets aliens as we try to catch an alien, we get a good old-fashioned showdown towards the end. Jupiter to Cowboys, the entire film is decked in with that Western atmosphere. The film feels adventurous, but at the same time, it feels so creepy in the most unsettling way. There are certain scenes in this film which are just haunting. We're watching this film in theaters, and that Gordy scene stuck with me. That claustrophobic scene. Ugh. And a classic way of letting the audience's imagination scare them. I found that the alien was more terrifying up until when we kind of got a little bit more of a glimpse of it. It's not to say that the alien itself wasn't scary though. In terms of comparing this to other Peele films, I would say that it's very difficult to rank these films because they're all really solid for different reasons. It really depends on the mood and the type of day. But in the end, I'm giving Nope an 8 to 9 out of 10. A very solid flick that I highly recommend watching. So stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show marathon to keep watching. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 12th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching Alfred Hitchcock's classic horror film, Psycho. Here are my thoughts. Honestly, I'm a big fan of these classic horror films. Psycho is a phenomenally well-made film and a classic for so many reasons. It's also a very bold film, I will say. Spoilers for the film, but deciding to kill off the character that we've been following from the beginning of the film very early on was such a bold decision that it managed to make work. Anthony Perkins does such a phenomenal job as Norman Bates, really having to carefully perform himself in a way where both the audience can trust him and not trust him at the same time, threatening and yet comforting. The music in this movie is almost universally well known, with the story itself also being airtight, having almost no issues at all, except for maybe around the middle, it could have been cut a little bit shorter. But in the end, I really did enjoy the film Psycho. It's fantastic, and I highly recommend watching it. I'm giving Psycho an 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10. Stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show, and have a safe day, a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 13th, Friday the 13th. Tonight we'll be watching Friday the 13th, Part 2. Here are my thoughts. If the original was the ultimate summer camp horror experience, the sequel is the classic Friday the 13th experience that you can get. It's interesting though, because we don't really get Jason with the whole hockey mask thing in this one. Seems like we're slowly progressing towards that as they're crafting out how his design is going to be. I don't think this was planned, but it's a little interesting. Granted, one of the flaws that it has after being the ultimate summer camp horror experience is that it doesn't really have that much to add. It's the ultimate, yes, but it kind of has no real substance. It's a slasher, but I enjoyed it. There's not really that much that I can add to this film. It feels very similar to the original. Granted, Jason's in this one, but the teenage counselors are still the teenage counselors and there's still a murder going around. Still a classic, and I can see the impact that it's had on many projects. At times, the film can be very predictable. I will say that whilst the original has a few aspects that this one didn't, I actually did enjoy this one a little bit more. In the end, I'm leaving Friday the 13th Part 2 a 7.5 out of 10. So, stick by tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show, and have a safe day, spooky night. Good night. Viewers beware, you're in for a scare. Happy October 14th, and tonight we'll be watching the 2015 film Goosebumps. Here are my thoughts. I like this movie. It's family-friendly fun, and it just has the essence of Goosebumps. It's got some twists, some turns, a beginning, middle, and end, and overall, I thought it was a very enjoyable time. It's funny, which I thought was very fine and appropriate for this type of film.
I didn't know being an audiophile was a crime.
What a file?
Whoa. That just means that he is a connoisseur of high-end audio equipment.
And yeah, this film was very adventurous. It has some spooks, it has some thrills, and it has a lot of comedy. Honestly, I had a great experience watching this film. Champ is a standout, Jack Black does a good job as R.L. Stein, and the overall cast did a good job. The story's fun, it's not perfect, it has some flaws, but it's still an enjoyable experience. And honestly, I just think that this film really just encapsulates the entire Goosebumps feel. There are a few areas though where I found it a little questionable. But hey, in the end, I really did enjoy Goosebumps, and I'm leaving it somewhere around a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. As a kid's film, it's really enjoyable. It's not perfect, but I had a great time overall watching it. So stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Night Picture Show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 15th. Tonight we'll be watching The Blair Witch Project. Here are my thoughts. Fun fact, there's actually a Scooby-Doo parody of this film. Also, I completely agree with this Letterboxd review. But how was The Blair Witch Project? It was pretty good. The atmosphere was definitely spooky and creepy, but I would say that if you're someone that gets afraid of monsters or anything, you have nothing to fear. To definitely watch this film. The documentaries go, this was pretty entertaining. Actually, I did find it pretty funny at times. I'm not sure if that was the intent. Considering the budget that this film had, it does a pretty good job overall in keeping me entertained. But I like that it's a found footage film. It's a surprisingly difficult form of filmmaking, I would say. Because if you don't do it really well, it could just be boring. But if you do it right, it can be really successful, and you can even be seen as one of the scariest movies of all time. Given the fact that I think this is one of the first films to have ever done that, that's really impressive. Also, I understand the budget reasons of why the Blair Witch wasn't shown. From an artistic standpoint, I thought it was brilliant. Not showing the Blair Witch and having the audience imagine how it looks is far more scarier. I think an unfortunate flaw that this film has is that knowing that it's fake ruins a lot of the tension. It's not the film's fault, but in this case, it did kind of affect it a little bit for me. Because this isn't like a scripted horror film where we have characters that we're meant to follow. It's more like watching a YouTube video or watching people overall having this type of experience. Hence why I'm not counting a story, really. But it was an enjoyable time, and overall I'm giving the Blair Witch Project a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. So stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a safe day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 16th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. Here are my thoughts. What can I say? Glenn slept around and he found out. I should clarify that we watched the 1984 original A Nightmare on Elm Street. The film is pure 80s, and that can be a positive as well as a negative. Whether it's the 80s music or the sense of a jump scare happening, it really does feel like an 80s horror film. Honestly, I had a good time watching it. It's not really scary. I found it to be a little bit in the sense, I don't know if it's just because I've seen too many horror films recently, but predictable in the sense of when a jump scare would occur. It is creative though, which I'll give it props for that. Freddy is such a creative antagonist and he's so threatening and interesting. And I thought the whole cast did a good job overall throughout the film. To me, I think Johnny Depp's Glenn was just the standout though in the film. It's pretty cool and gnarly at times. I don't know why I didn't feel that shocked overall. Like I could sense whenever we were in a dream a lot more easier for some reason. It's a classic and it's definitely a film that I recommend everybody watch at least once in a lifetime. But honestly, in the end, I really did enjoy A Nightmare on Elm Street and I'm giving it somewhere around a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. So make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. And if you excuse me, I'm gonna get some shut-eye, but have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 17th. Tonight we'll be watching Wreck, a film recommended by Carolina. So, here are my thoughts. What a fantastic follow-up found footage film this month. Thank you so much, Carolina, for the awesome film recommendation. Honestly, I really did enjoy Wreck. I think the film is scary at times. It's very creative, and honestly, I'm very impressed with how they filmed it, especially with a lot of one-shots from what it seemed, even though I'm pretty sure that it's some clever editing, but still, it's impressive nonetheless. The way the story unravels is done really well. Like, it doesn't just feel like just found footage. I mean, it feels like a found footage film, which I think is perfect. That's exactly what it should be. But the way that it can also perform and have an entire story, I mean, it's been done before now, but still, it's very impressive. I did really like the presentation in this film being more of a news broadcast type thing that they were doing. Well, television or news reporter. Whilst the ending of the film is good, I would say that the third act is when it gets a little bit more in the predictable side, where things don't seem very shocking anymore, and you can definitely kind of see where things are heading towards the end. I mean, the way they did Caesar, the stakes felt threatening, and a fantastic film to get in the zombie field this month. But in the end, I really did enjoy Wreck, a film that just kept getting better, and it unfortunately simmered down a little bit towards the end. But overall, I'm giving Wreck an 8 to 8.5 out of 10. So with that being said, make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 18th. Tonight we'll be watching The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. Here are my thoughts. What a fantastic and incredibly messed up film that was. Strange Thing About the Johnsons, directed by Ari Aster, is a well done film completely. If you have issues hearing or viewing aspects of sexual assault, I would recommend not to watch this film. But to those brave enough to watch this film, you're in for a very good film. I found the cinematography to be really well.
Am I totally alone here? Am I just this abusive monster and you're some sad, helpless victim?
The acting was great, and overall, I had a good time watching it. I thought that the depictions of the assault were done in a manner where it wasn't too much where I couldn't watch, but at the same time, it really just stuck the message, so I thought that was very brilliant. The film is a short film, so overall, I would say that for what it presents, it's very well made. I would have liked if we had a little bit more time to enrich ourselves with these characters, but overall, it did a really good job. In the end, I'm giving The Strange Thing About the Johnsons an 8 to 8.5 out of 10, so stick by tomorrow to see tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a sunny day, y'all, and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 19th. Tonight we'll be watching Disney's 2023 version of Haunted Mansion. Here are my thoughts. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. I would say that it's honestly on par with the original, just for separate reasons overall. It is very unfortunate that the Haunted Mansion has never had a truly great film though. Starting off with the positives, I really like the cast. Keith Stanfield does a phenomenal job in this movie, and Owen Wilson, I just love the guy. Anytime he shows up, I was like, okay, I was having a good time with that. And the story itself was decent. I would also like to see that as for the little nods to the Haunted Mansion, that was nice to see overall, whether it's the way that the music would move sometimes or the way that certain shots would show up. That was a fun time overall. The biggest issue that this film has is tone. This film does not know what it wants to be. It adds a lot of comedy at times to the point where it's very distracting. Like, sometimes I was chuckling, but most of the time it was just too much. Also, in terms of the visuals, for a Disney type of film, especially one that released in theaters, kind of wasn't the best, I would say, to a distracting degree. Like, I'm talking characters looked very cartoonish. But in the end, just like the original, I'm gonna give Haunted Mansion a 6 to 7 out of 10. So with that being said, make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 20th, and tonight we'll be watching 1986's The Fly. Here are my thoughts. First off, The Fly has gotta be the most gnarliest, disgusting film I've seen this month.
and it was pretty good. Right off the bat, let's give out where compliments are due in the makeup department. They did a phenomenal job in this film. The body horror that you can see of a man transforming into a fly is just disgusting. Truly, I've never thought about being a fly, but now I never want to be a fly. Fly starts off like your typical superhero origin story, but then it quickly deteriorates into a straight up horror story. And I mean quick change. I mean straight up characteristics and then body horror. Disgusting, grotesque body horror. My god, the last 30 minutes are just absolutely nuts. I mean, it's loco, crazy, absolutely just bonkers. Everybody in this film did a good job. In terms of issues with this film does suffer from having the dumbest decisions I've seen characters make this month. And I'm not talking just being under the influence. I mean straight up, some of these decisions were just loco. Not a thought in mind, and let this be a lesson to never drink and perform life-altering experiments. But overall, I like The Fly. It's an 80s classic that I do recommend everybody go watch at least once in a lifetime. And whilst overall it's a good film, if grotesque body horror is not your style, then I recommend easing into it. I'm giving The Fly an 8 to 8.5 out of 10. And stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a Sunday and a spooky night. Good night. Saturday, October 21st. Welcome back. Tonight we'll be watching The Batman. Here are my thoughts. I love everything about this film. From the cinematography, the acting, the music, beautiful, perfection even. The story itself hooks you right from the beginning. And let's just praise Michael Giacchino for making one of the best Batman scores of all time. No character seems wasted. From Falcone, the Riddler, Penguin, everything is strung together and connected in one way or another. Robert Pattinson does a phenomenal job as Batman. Jeffrey Wright is perfect as Gordon. I'll be giving my favorite version of the character. I love the dynamic that he has with bats. If there were any flaws in this film, it's probably around the middle where it tends to drag just a little bit. But honestly, I could just talk about this film for hours. All you need to know is, as a Batman fan, this is perfection and this is Batman. I'm gonna give The Batman a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. Is it possible for us to reach 507 followers and beat the Riddler's following count? Let's make it happen and make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 22nd. Welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching a film that was recommended by my friend Steven, A Quiet Place. Here are my thoughts. Imagine dying because you sneezed or couldn't hold a fart. I liked A Quiet Place. The film barely has any dialogue, and yet it really just manages to grip you. The first half of the film being a lot more world building and getting ready to know our characters and how everything works, and then the second half being when everything kind of goes down. The latter of the film is where I really caught myself really just tensed up all over the place. I mean, I was literally like this at one point. Flaws of the film all come down to some parts of the story. Going briefly in depth, why didn't the family live by a waterfall? And in terms of weaknesses of the monster, just bring the question of how some people aren't still alive. Or why they decided to have another baby at this time. I know some people have their problems, but I personally really did enjoy the more personal family aspects of this whole story. There are definitely areas in the story where you can say that it put characters in positions just to add more tension. And in some areas it is justified. In some other areas, I would say that after being in a world like this for 472 days, frustrations can occur. But in certain positions, it is justified. The film unfortunately suffers from making things worse for our characters just for the sake of tension at times. Considering the ending, I really hope that the sequel is less personal and more expansive. But we'll find that out in the next Halloween Horror Picture Show. I'm going to give A Quiet Place an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Have a Saturday and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 23rd and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching A Quiet Place Part 2. Here are my thoughts. I liked A Quiet Place Part 2. It holds many of the pros and also many of the cons of the original. Quite frankly, the biggest issue that this film has is that it has really nothing to offer. Whilst it does make sense to be a sequel, I think the way that it's presented, it's fine, but it just doesn't hold any of that grip. It's a bit expansive, which I did enjoy, but it still feels a lot more personal and almost like nothing really does change. We learn a bit, which is good, but nothing really changes in terms of story. Essentially, every pro and con from the original transfers itself right to the sequel. The cast is still phenomenal, the music is still very wonderful. The film still has many thrills, many elements where you connect to characters, and it still is very engaging. It's just not that strong of a sequel overall. But in the end, I'm giving A Quiet Place Part 2 a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. An overall good film that just needed to feel a lot more like its own thing. So stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a Sunday and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 24th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we will be reviewing the 1974 version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Here are my thoughts. It's another classic that I finally got to watch. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre truly is a very well-made film. In terms of horror and how uncomfortable the atmosphere may be, the film excels at all that. The atmosphere that it gives truly is very uncomfortable. It has this grain-like look that fits perfectly into the film. Naturally because it was made during this time, but the 1970s look fits it perfectly. I think the low budget of this film really can be seen as a positive, giving it this grungy type look and style. The film was less gory than expected, which isn't a negative, so to say. I found the way that the film managed to handle some of the massacre to be done in a manner that, though was highly uncomfortable, made me shriek, but done in a tasteful manner where it wasn't just torture. The story does have a twist, but to me I never found it really gripping me that much. I will say that the last 20 to 15 minutes of the film were both uncomfortable, pure horror, and yet left me in a mixture of oddly satisfied and dissatisfied. In the end, I'm giving the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a sunny day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 25th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching a recommendation by Angel Estrada, Slaughterhouse. Here are my thoughts. I'm gonna cut to the chase. This movie's not good. Acting wasn't that well. Story was all over the place. And quite frankly, I don't know why this film was even made.
as it holds no real purpose. But I had a good time watching it. I have a soft spot for garbage movies, and whilst my rating isn't gonna be so positive, I will say that I had a positive time watching it. It was engaging, and I found myself interested and entertained. I would say it was a nice one to watch this Wednesday. The story between the horse sloth and the sorority voting were connected by basically nothing more than a thin piece of rope. Listen, it's not the worst film I've seen, and it's a very unique premise. It just wasn't executed to the best potential, but it was dumb and fun. In the end, I'm giving Slaughterhouse a 2.5 to 3 out of 10. I do want to say there's nothing wrong with liking movies like this. I like movies like this. Just from a review and film standpoint, it's not that good. So make sure to stick by for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a safe day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 26th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching another recommendation by one of my fans, Gooby-Doo, or Yay. Tonight we'll be watching Skinamarink, so here are my thoughts. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit disappointed with this film. I'll start off with some positives. I really do love the atmosphere. The creepy, cozy, and yet haunting way that the film looks is amazing. The sound quality of this film is perfect, I would say. And I love the little noise type of feel that it has. It's unsettling, but in a way that keeps you hooked for it. Listen, at the beginning of this film, I was having very high hopes for it. But the truth of the matter is the film is creepy, but it's also boring. If this was a short film, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. But given the fact that the film is basically an hour and a half, an hour 40, it's a bit of a struggle to get through, or at least it was for me last night. Maybe the film just had me on an unfortunate night, but overall it was just a bit of a drag. Because basically, whatever you get in the first 5 minutes is what the whole film is. It doesn't fully escalate, and it's a whole lot of creepy type atmosphere with an occasional loud noise or something that just kind of spook you. Which is a shame. Leaving Skinamarink 3.5 to 4 out of 10. So with that being said, make sure to stay by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a Sunday, spooky night. Happy October 27th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween. Here are my thoughts. We are not in a good streak currently with Halloween films, and by the looks of the FNAF reviews, which I'm still being optimistic, but it's not looking so good recently. Goosebumps 2 is disappointing. I wasn't expecting masterpiece. This film is frustratingly bad. Characters for the most part are annoying. Story is unoriginal. Almost no one from the original movie is back. To the point where I'm actually wondering why this is even a sequel. There were plot lines that were just forgotten. And the film looks so awful. Like visually speaking, with the CGI, it looks terrible. Flappy shows up in this one, and anytime he walks, it's so bad. None of the charm is really back from the original film. Other than a few characters and qualities, the film is just not that good. Jack Black carries this film, well, at least as much as he could. In the end, I'm giving Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween, a 3 to 4 out of 10. Maybe even a 2, but a 3 to 4 sounds about right. So make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a safe day and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 28th, welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be reviewing Five Nights at Freddy's. Here are my thoughts. As mentioned in my fresh thoughts, the film is very amusing and I was highly entertained. As a longtime fan of the series, overall I thought that the characters were very well cast and I had a great time watching it and just had a lot of fun, but the story is way too weak. Coming from a longtime fan on the canon side, it's not good. Characters are not at all what they are, the story seems a little bland, elements are dwarfed all over the place and it just feels a little way too iffy everywhere. And then even watching this from a film standpoint, the story is not that strong. Elements are forgotten, it's kind of entertaining, but not really. It's not bland, but being a FNAF fan really kept me more engaged with the film itself. The issue that the film has is that it's trying to appeal to both newer and older fans, leaving no one really fully satisfied. I think the film being PG-13 does hurt it. I think it being PG-13 could have still been very wonderful, and I think the film has it as a disadvantage. And I think the tone is just all over the place. It tries to be funny, kid-friendly, and then scary and mature. It's very dissatisfying. At the end, I'm gonna have to give Five Nights at Freddy's a 5 out of 10. I was amused, but I am also left disappointed, but that's my thoughts. So make sure to stay by tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a safe day, and a spooky night. Happy October 29th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be reviewing Talk to Me. Here are my thoughts. Talk to Me is a fantastically horrific film. The cast does a phenomenal job and the camera work is incredible. I mean, absolutely stunning. But it only specifically works for this film. I say that because me personally, I don't want that many horror films to try replicating this type of style because it perfectly fits this film. Music, the cinematography, the makeup, the story, everything was fantastic. I think apart from the imagery, one of the things that really gravitated towards me in the film was how they handled the hand overall. Not just being something that was scary, but also being something that's used more like a drug abuse problem. The way the film manages to handle the subject matter and story overall is simply incredible. And in terms of modern day horror, this is definitely a film I recommend. In terms of length, I thought it was perfect. Maybe some areas in the beginning could have been stretched out a bit more. Maybe a bit at the end could have been shortened. But honestly, the film is basically perfect. There were a few areas where it feels like it may have fallen a bit flat. In the end, I'm giving Talk to Me a 9 to 9.5 out of 10. So make sure to stick by tomorrow for tomorrow's Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a Sunday and a spooky night. Good night. Happy October 30th and welcome back to our Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching a recommendation that I got from my uncle. We're going to be watching the 1983 film Christine. Here are my thoughts. Christine is a very well-made film. And it's also a very well-made car. Honestly, I was a bit worried that the film was going to be very dated, considering how it may have been handled. It may have been another Nightmare of Elm Street type of situation where it's very 80s-ified to the point where it's a little distracting. Whilst there are a little bit areas where it does kind of fall in that realm, no fault of the film itself, it's just a times, the film was still very entertaining. I thought the acting was good and it was shot very well. The music was stand out in the film, especially the tunes that Christine would crank up, especially during the rampages. I mean, like, Christine, she's got good taste. If you've seen any type of 80s horror film, the story has very similar beats. That being said, it still has some unique twists overall, though I would have preferred a little bit more of a fleshed out kind of first half. I thought the corruption that Christine did was maybe a little too swift, especially how Ernie goes from being a nerd to suddenly being Mr. Cool. But honestly, Christine was a blast, and overall I'm gonna give the film about an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. So make sure to stick by around for tomorrow's final Halloween Horror Picture Show. Have a good day and a spooky night. Happy October 31st and welcome back to our final Halloween Horror Picture Show. Tonight we'll be watching the 1981 sequel, Halloween 2. Here are my thoughts. Well, it looks like this is gonna be a very long Halloween. But you know what? I'm pleasantly surprised. Dare I say I like this more than the first one? When it comes to Halloween 2, I feel like it solidifies a lot of the essence of Halloween, which can be a good and bad thing. The atmosphere, the characters, the tropes, it's all great. The story's still pretty good. But to me, I've never been a big fan of the whole Michael being unkillable thing. I think it always makes the endings a lot more dissatisfying. Because you never really win. Michael will always come back. It's been 2 years since I reviewed the first film, but I really like how instantly we just jumped right back into that Halloween night. Nothing felt out of place. And for any newcomers, that you can almost watch this film without needing to watch the first one. See, the biggest flaw that this film has is that it doesn't feel like we went anywhere. Apart from learning something big about a character, it doesn't really feel like much has changed. So I'm giving Halloween 2 somewhere around a 7.5 to 8.5 out of 10. That being said, that brings to an end our final Halloween Horror Picture Show. Thank you so much for tagging along. Have a sunny day, a spooky night, happy Halloween, good night. That brings us to an end on this year's Halloween Horror Picture Show. I want to thank everybody who ended up sending a recommendation, and let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts and ratings in these films. Have a sunny day, and I look forward to doing this next year. Till next time, peace.